Hello, my name is Moishe Steigmann, the Mindful Rabbi, and today our conversation topic is why stop at 10? Lech Lecha, Proportionality, and Casualties of War. I am recording this video on October 31st, 2023, and our Torah portion for the week is Parashat Lech Lecha. And in Genesis chapter 18, we recount a familiar story. The story of God going up to Abraham and telling Abraham of God's plan to destroy and eradicate the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Famously, Abraham rejects God's premise. Abraham instead stands up to God and asks, "But God, what if there are 50 good people in the city? Will you wipe away the good along with the wicked?" And God concedes, God agrees that for the sake of 50 good people, God would not destroy the cities. Unsatisfied, Abraham continues to petition, but what about for 45? Is the difference of the number of 5 people that great from 50 to 45 that you would still destroy the cities? And God acquiesces to 45. Abraham then continues to 40, to 30, to 20, to 10, where Abraham says, "Let my Lord not be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there?" God agrees. "I will not destroy for the sake of 10, God responds. And then having finished speaking to Abraham, God departs. Traditionally, there are a couple of classic reasons for why the conversation ended here. Some will suggest that God knew that there would not be 10 good people in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so God was willing to negotiate from 50 to 45 to 40 to 30 to 20 to 10, knowing that ultimately God would still not find the requisite and agreed upon number of good people in the city, and God would be able to rain justice and punishment upon the cities of and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And if that's the case, then why did God entertain this debate with Abraham at all? Commentators suggest that this was a test for Abraham. Would Abraham stand idly by as people, both wicked and innocent, would face their destruction? Or would Abraham stand up and advocate for those who were truly innocent casualties of destruction? Other commentators suggest that the reason that the conversation ended at 10 is because Abraham stopped at that number. Abraham said to God, "May I implore you one more time," that Abraham's final number was 10. That for the sake of 10 righteous people, Abraham would plead with God not to destroy the cities. If that's the case, we have to ask, why stop at 10? What's the difference between 20 and 10, between 15 and 10, between 11 and 10, between 10 and 5, between 10 and 1, between 10 and 9? Why stop at 10? I'd like to suggest the possibility that perhaps 10 is not a logical number. Of course, within Judaism, 10 makes sense. We know that within Judaism, 10 constitutes an Edah, a congregation, a community, a critical mass. And so perhaps Abraham was thinking that 10 was a critical mass of righteous people. But I'd like to suggest that Abraham's ending at 10 was far less logical than it was based on a feel. Imagine the following hypothetical. Imagine that you are about to buy a new house and you've been pre-approved for a loan of up to $250,000. And you know all the things that you want in your new house, you know the things that you need, and you go house shopping. And you're going from house to house to house, and you come upon a house and you look through it, and this is the dream house. It checks every item off your list, your needs, your wants, and it even has things you could never have dreamed of imagining that you'd want. And then you finally look at the sticker price, and the cost of the house is $250,000 exactly. Would you buy it? Of course you would. You wouldn't think twice. And certainly if the house were $240,000 or $230,000 or $200,000, you would buy the house in an instant. Now imagine that the cost of the house were $251,000, just $1,000 more than you were prepared to spend. I have no doubt in the universe you'd find a way to find that extra $1,000. And the same if the house were $252,000 or $253,000 or even $255,000. On the other hand, if the cost of the house were $400,000, as much as you love it, I have to imagine you wouldn't give it any real thought to buying. So what's that dollar? What is that single dollar amount where you think to yourself, where you feel, yes, I'm going to stretch beyond my budget and purchase it, or this is too much? I can't imagine that at this moment intellectually you could give me a concrete number. But I'm confident that you'd be able to feel that this works or that this doesn't. And it's the same thing if you're buying a car. If you're buying a new piece of clothing or a new piece of furniture, this is just a little bit too much, or I can stretch to do it. Or even as something as simple as something as dessert in a restaurant. On a concrete level, just a few years ago, my nonprofit organization, Own Your Judaism, recently hosted and sponsored its third ever Shabbat hike. And I was talking with Moshe Katz, who has led each of our hikes to this point, and we were talking about what that critical mass of people would be for us to do the hike in a given month. And we came upon a number. Amazingly, he and I had actually come upon the exact same number before I even asked. And it wasn't an analytical number. We didn't use advanced math or calculus. There was no algorithm that we plugged in. It simply felt to us like this critical mass was good for us to move forward, and fewer we would wait for a little bit more people. And I think about all that when we come back to Abraham. I don't know that in his conversation with God, Abraham had brought pages and pages and pages of notes. I don't think anthropomorphically Abraham brought a calculator, not anthropomorphically. When you take something out of context by time, there's another word. I'll think of it later. That even though calculators didn't exist at that moment, I don't think Abraham brought his calculator and was doing advanced algorithms to come at a number. I think 10 felt right. As I'm thinking about the war in Israel and the suffering that's going on in Israel and in the Palestinian territories and in the Middle East, I'm thinking about this conversation between Abraham and God in a new light. Because instead of focusing on whether God left or Abraham left, on whether this was a leadership test for Abraham, we're starting to think of numbers. And we have been hearing in the 3.5 weeks of this war, what is too much? What is proportional? What is justified? As of today, we have 1,400, 1,500 of Israelis who are killed. We have over 200 hostages in captivity. We have over 7,000 Palestinians who are killed. These are the reported numbers. And so we keep asking about proportionality. And some people talk about a ratio, 1 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 5 to 1. Other people talk about an absolute number. For this number of people who are killed, I can somehow suffer and accept it, but for that number, it's too much. Other people talk about the legal definition of proportionality, that proportionality is not about a number, but rather about minimizing the amount of civilian casualties in the pursuit of a military objective. But all of this comes back to one simple fact. We don't have an absolute concrete number. We simply don't. We know in our guts and in our kishkas, in our heart, that as painful as it is, this we can accept, but that is too much. I don't know what that number is. For me, for you, for the world, I don't know what that ratio is. I'm sitting here in my house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm not currently living in Israel or in the Palestinian territories, and I am not a decision maker in either of those places. I have to confess, part of me is a little relieved. I don't know how I would begin to make a decision on behalf of a country and a people and another people's on what that number is, can, should be, or must be. I don't know those things. But I know what scares me in this conversation about proportionality. The scary part to me is not that you and I might have different numbers or different ratios, or that we might see these things the same way. The scary thing is not that we might discuss or debate or disagree on how to weigh multiple factors and how to prioritize certain factors. The scary thing for me is that instead of this being about ideas and values and ethics and prioritization, it becomes about you versus me. I am entrenched in what I believe, and you must agree with me, or else you're blank, blank, blank. And you are entrenched in what you believe, and unless I agree with you, I am a blank, blank, or blank. What scares me most is that with all of the dehumanization rampant in the Middle East right now, that might find its way to you and me. And instead of debating ideas, we dehumanize and delegitimize the other because we see things differently. I don't know if God and Abraham ultimately agreed on a specific number. I don't know if God walked away and God and Abraham ended his conversation with God because they had to come upon a mutual agreement. Yes, 10, we're good. Shake proverbial and anthropomorphic hands. I'm using the word correctly there. Shake proverbial and anthropomorphic hands and walk away. And I don't know if they radically disagreed about the number. But I do know that they listened to each other, that they honored each other, even if they disagreed passionately. And so my hope and bracha for you and for me right now, as banal, as idealistic, as naive as it might seem, is that we do no less. I have no doubt there are people watching this video or listening to it who are going to resonate with what I'm saying. And I have no doubt that there are going to be people who are tremendously bothered by what I'm saying. And I have no doubt that if we were to talk individually and privately, offline or online, and try to imagine the numbers, that there are a great number of us that might see eye to eye, and perhaps a great number of us that might prioritize things extremely differently. But my hope and bracha is that through all of this, whether we agree or disagree, we not lose sight of the humanity and dignity within each of us. There are always extremes. There are always radicals. There are always people on such marginalized fringes who are so vehement in their radicalness that there isn't meaningful conversation. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to me, and I'm talking to you. And so my hope and bracha is that like God and Abraham were able to listen to each other and were able to honor each other, even amidst a seemingly impossible, chaotic situation. Once again, my name is Moishe Steigmann, the Mindful Rabbi, and these are my reflections. Why stop at 10? Lech Lecha, proportionality, and casualties of war.